So thank you. I want to thank in particular Bjorn Westrup for organizing and all his collaborators. It's an honor for me to be here, and because there are many of my mentors here, and I'd like to introduce the early vocal contact as a primary contact between mothers, fathers, and preterm infants in the NICU. My presentation will be divided in 3 parts. So there will be the rationale. It is a part of an editorial project we were working on with Bjorn Westrup and Pierre Kuhn. So this editorial work will give us the rationale for the early vocal contact. I will present some data about the last systematic review that will be published soon in Acta Pediatrica. On maternal voice intervention, so what we know now about the effects of maternal voice and preterm infants. And the last part, maybe the part that I prefer, is on videos. So we will have a look to what happens to preterm infants when mothers and fathers talk and sing to them. What is early vocal contact? Parents, it's very simple. Parents talking and singing to their preterm infants in condition of closeness and proximity. I have to tell you this detail. I began this research after becoming a mother of a preterm infant. So as it happens sometimes in life, you make huge choices when something special happens. So this leads my commitment to the early vocal contact and in general to closeness and proximity between parents and preterm infants in the NICU. So the rationale, we needed to build up a rationale for early vocal contact, and for that we asked for specialists and practitioners to give their point of view on specific topics related to early vocal contact. The first part is dedicated to maternal voice. We asked Colin Trevarton to talk about communicative musicality, Christine on prenatal experience, and Sandra Triab, for example, on the voice as maternal voice as a special signal for infants. And then what's the role of maternal voice for social and communicative development? These were the main questions. And which are the brain mechanisms involved both in production, vocal production, and in vocal perception in adults and in young infants. What we had to ask also in order to reinforce and to understand better the rationale for early vocal contact was to understand the auditory environment in the NICU, and we asked Catherine Philbin to answer to this question, and Pierre Kuhn, of course, is writing on auditory development and auditory sensitivity, in particular for maternal voice in preterm infants. What we wanted to know was what are the pathways, the mechanism maybe, through which early vocal contact can act with preterm infants, and its influence on stabilization, on sleep, on behavioral states, and speculation about possibility of effects on language and communication development. Another question that we were asking to Joy Brown was, in a bioecological perspective, what can we say about live maternal voice or recorded maternal voice? So this morning I heard something about singing in NIDCAP style. So I found this expression very interesting by Carl Rombo. And family-centered music therapy, we will hear Friederike and Pernilla later on the family-centered care music therapy, and we asked even to Ilan Schurmark what means empowering parents and what's the role of music therapist. And then we know that we insert the early vocal contact in a long tradition of family-based interventions. So the most important, one of the most important rationale are the effectiveness of family-centered intervention. And early vocal contact is a specific aspect of family-based interventions. So the limits, the potentialities, and the role of epigenetic in this process. So this is the rationale, and the book will be published in 2017, we hope as soon as possible, to close this huge work. And what I present to you now are the data of the systematic review. So what do we know about the effectiveness of maternal voice interventions and preterm infants? We can see first a great increase of studies exploring the effects of maternal voice on preterm infants. So since 2000, we could see a huge increase, and this was just till 2015. And in the last 2 years, many studies were published on that topic. So there is a great interest in the topic. And the main outcome, the great main outcome, is a short-term effect on stabilization of preterm infants. So mother's voice can stabilize preterm infants from a physiological point of view, and we can see that the effects were calculated in many subdomains. So behavioral, first of all, physiological and behavioral, and then feeding domains. So there is, this is another result of the review, that there is a high heterogeneity in the domains they were taking into account in order to evaluate the effectiveness of the maternal voice. And there is a lack of long-term effectiveness. So we don't know the long-term effectiveness of maternal vocal interventions, but maybe this afternoon we will have some results. So the conclusion of the data of the systematic review is that there is a need of general agreement on the expected clinical outcomes and the growth of scientific publication. We have enlightened some short-term outcomes, but long-term effectiveness is missing. And what is interesting is that on 15 studies, only 2 studies were on live maternal voice, and the other ones were on recorded maternal voice. So there is a lack of studies on the effects of live vocal contact between parents, between mothers and preterm infants. But the main question is, which are the specific pathways to which the early vocal contact can act? And so to answer to this question, we can see these first videos. So what happens when mothers talk to their preterm infants?
Con tutti i palloncini, con tutte le belle cosine, che torniamo a casa noi due, piccina cara, Donino, bello, mia Donino è piccina, che fa la nana adesso, piccina, fai la nanina, ride, il bottoncino bello sei te.
So, mothers talking motherese. We can, if Julia was 31 weeks, and if we analyze just the pitch of the mother's voice.
Piccina, fai la nanina. Ride, il bottoncino bello sei te.
We can see that the maternal voice regulates on infants' display in a very sensitive manner. So we wanted to know how the mother's voice reacts to preterm infants' behavioral display, how mothers are tuned to the infant's displays. So what we did was to identify some moments in which the infant reacts, for example, opening the eyes and smiling, and see through the vocal analysis what happens to the voice, to the mother's voice. Here you can see some moments of eyes opening and smiling. And what we found was that when infants open the eyes and or smile, the mother adapts her voice by increasing the characteristic of infant-directed speech. So during early vocal contact, infant-directed speech increases. We know from previous studies that when the mother's voice increases in pitch, infants react by sucking. This was a study by Butler, 2014. But what we didn't know was this bidirectionality. So is the infant active? Does the infant activate changes in mother's voice? And we discovered that these changes exist and are very linked to preterm infant-directed speech. As we know from studies by Patricia Kuhl, the preterm infant-directed speech is very linked to linguistic development. So maternal voice is not only voice, we heard it this morning, is a multimodal communication. So mothers communicate in a multimodal way. We see this short, very short clip video, Stefano, 31 weeks, and then I will show you it in slow motion, so don't worry. Okay, it's very short. Huh? I will show you again. What I want you to see here is in slow motion, I will show you the bodies, the movement. And with this, the mother imitates the infant head, rising head, imitating with her body, rising her head, and with her voice, with an ascending pitch. Oh, I will show it in slow motion, and then we will hear it again. Begins, imitating, climax, and a shared smile. So this is the body, and this is the voice. So in a multimodal way, in a cross-modal way, with redundant information, when mothers and fathers are in close contact, in intimacy when they're preterm infants, they act what remains inactive after the preterm birth. So this is the first consideration. In condition of intimacy, early vocal contact can really make active some intuitive ways of maternage, patterns of reciprocity that remain inactive after preterm birth. Early vocal contact can sustain the emergence of patterns of proto-conversation after Colwyn's talk. We know a lot about proto-conversation, and here we can see this video. I took some notes about the presentation this morning. I had something to say, but I think that the word this morning were said by Carl Rombo and Colin Trevarton are the best way to describe it. So I was not singing, sorry if the quotation is not perfect, but I was not singing or speaking, but I was telling stories with an emotional content. I hope to be talking about humanity, and Colin answers. It was sharing a narrative story in their voices and in their bodies. So now we are going to see it during kangaroo care with Austin, 29 weeks of gestational age, and his father. The video is much longer, but we have no time. What I wanted to show you is just the analysis of what happens in these micro moments of attachment. And what we can hear and see on the left side of this So in red, infant vocalization, and you can see the descending line of the father vocalization. Every 3 seconds, and the pitch toward which the father's vocalization starts is the infant pitch. Can you see the high? It starts there and it goes down. It starts where the infant is vocally and it goes down, giving a pattern of rhythmical framework. So every 3 seconds. These are we can see here the key elements of proto-conversation: turn, taking, reciprocity in rhythmical structures and patterns. And we can see at the end what happens in the right side. We are at the end. Infant is calm. Vocalization and humming, and final humming. So till the end, the father constructs every 3 seconds this descending vocalization that is what we intuitively use to calm the baby with lullabies with descending contours. La 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 la. And with the body, we do that, and with the caress. And this is descending, and this is what intuitively this father made with Austin. Early vocal contact sustains reciprocal regulation. So I want you to see this video, and then I will tell something about it. So I'm not sure if it's a knit-cap style or if knit-cap singing style can become a new musical genre. But sending city. But what I think is that it's really linked to the first presentation about the intensity, about humming, and what is early regulation. So we could see the reciprocal regulation, not only Julia regulating on the voice, but the other way around, the voice is co-regulating with her behaviors. And while Julia calms the arms and reach a closer position and open the eyes, something in maternal voice changes, intuitively changes. just accompanying this co-regulation, and then ending with longer ends and with lower intensity and long pauses. So the silences and the pauses while we are singing to infants are as much important as the singing and the talking. And there the infants get active, as Christine Moon was talking in her presentation. Early vocal contact enhances synchrony or symphony, Colin. I don't know if we can call it synchrony or symphony, but we can hear these. We can look at this video and then talking about it.
Te il dubbio e la certezza, la forza e la dolcezza, e per te il mare che sa di sale, e per te la notte di Natale, e per te ogni cosa che c'è, ninna na, ninna e per te ogni cosa che c'è, ninna na, ninna e per te ogni cosa che c'è, ninna na, ninna
So I'd really like to know what you see in this video. What I could really see is what was said this morning, that the music is a two-way, the singing is a two-way process in which narrativity and histories can begin. So what I collected, for example, from mothers was really deeply emotional states when saying I start talking and she starts open the eyes and looking at me, and I felt if this was the first time that I was a mother. So these are sentences that I found I've always found, both in talking and in speaking condition. But which are the best condition or limitation for enhancing the vocal contact between parents and preterm infants? First of all, we can say by literature and by the systematic review that, for example, most of the study, the great majority of the studies start when the infants reach stability. And if the babies are unstable, we suggest to pay extra attention to the preterm infant physiological and behavioral responses. Very ill preterm infants can show later on the responsive, delayed responsive, difficult to read responsive, and so what we can suggest is the necessity to pay attention to the infant's physiological and behavioral responsive. In which are the best condition? I would say condition of intimacy. As we said, there are special condition of intimacy where intuitive patterns of co-regulation of maternage and of parenting can pass from inactive to active. In a condition, as Pierre Kuhn told before, in a condition of physical closeness, so when possible, during skin-to-skin contact. And what we could suggest is to avoid starting the vocalization when preterm infants are in deep sleep. So just some general consideration about the optimal condition to enhance early vocal contact and the limitation for that. Early vocal contact opens a window, and I want to conclude with this slide. Early vocal contact calls for reflecting, for example, on early markers of synchrony. So we saw synchrony between the voice, the body, the embodied voice, and the infant's reaction. But what we need are combined methods on vocal and behavioral analysis, hormonal and the combination with neuroimaging analysis for detecting these early markers of synchrony, of an enhanced synchrony. The same work that was done with skin-to-skin contact should be done now with early vocal contact. But it opens an interesting window on early mimicry and neonatal imitation. So we've seen that the mothers imitate the infant both in the body and with the face movement. So what does it mean being imitating? So we were very interested in the fact that that infants imitate and preterm infants have this prenatal mimicry also starting from 36 weeks of gestational age. But what we don't know is what happens when you are imitating. We certainly know that there is an increase in oxytocin with young infants, but we don't know what happens with preterm infants. So this opens a window for research and calls for questions. What's the involvement of the mirror neuron system, for example, and which are the potential consequences of an enhanced neonatal mimicry, for example, on social competencies, on social communication, and for example, on autism spectrum disorders. And this, I believe that is a special cue for investigating the origins of consciousness. But I stop here, and I wish to know after in the discussion if you have observation and proposals. Thank you.